Israel Philharmonic makes music in a very special way. I don't think they're doing it consciously, it's just them. They are the most instinctively endowed musicians that I know.
There is a blending, a cutting into the string, a kind of soaring exuberance in the sound that comes out as something else that was called a long time ago, round, firm, and fully packed. And they also have a quickness and an agility and an individual ability as technicians that is remarkable. Is the equal of any orchestra in the world. When they want to, they can outplay anybody.
This orchestra is so, I feel, so affected by who is on the podium that I feel when they really love somebody who's on the podium, somebody like Zubin or B'nai B'rith, they just play absolutely phenomenally.
What is particularly rapport-making in Israel is the knowledge that the people who are listening are really listening. They're not just hearing, they're listening because of this incredible background they have, the cultural background they have.
If you feel as an orchestra or as a band that you are really needed and people are thirsty to music, it gives you kind of feeling that wherever you come, never mind if you have a beautiful hall or you play in the open field, you just take your instrument and you give the best you can in the moment.
The Israel Philharmonic is respected and admired in this country and important in the life of the people. Its members are gathering for a trip to the Upper Galilee in the north of Israel, leaving their Tel Aviv home on the shores of the Mediterranean, as they frequently do, in order to perform at a special Israeli event. This time, it's the 60th year of the founding of one of Israel's earliest farming settlements, Ein Harod, a kibbutz in the valley of Jezreel.
Our orchestra is composed of people from many, many countries in the world. We have a whole new generation of Israelis, half a dozen Americans, we have Canadian, French.
Today, the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra is about half composed of Sabras, of people born, raised, and educated in this country. The other half is a mixture. About 20 to 25 are Russians, new immigrants who came during the last 10 years from the Soviet Union.
The original members of the IPO were almost exclusively from Germany and Eastern Europe.
Usually, we are going to see the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra in Tel Aviv or in Haifa. But tonight is something special, and we are going to see them here in Ein Harod when Zubin Mehta and the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra are going to play here, and we are very glad to see them.
I found my way to the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra one summer when I was studying in Camden, Maine, in the Salzedo harp colony. And Alice Chalafour, the teacher there, received a letter from the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra saying that they had an opening and they were looking for a principal harpist. And I was there, and she said, "Judith, this is for you." I said, "Where is it? What is it? What are you talking about?" "Look, chances like this don't come twice. You have to go for the audition, and I think it's right for you."
I knew that the orchestra was looking for a first clarinetist. I heard about that, and then I happened to be subbing in the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra, playing extra clarinet, and a girl clarinetist in the section told me that Zubin was looking for someone and that she wanted to introduce me to him. Maybe I'd be interested in this job. So I met him, and Zubin said, "You practice hard and come play for me in 2 months." So I worked like a devil, and the audition went well 2 months afterwards, and he hired me to come to Israel.
I came here in 1961 and did the entire program here for the first time in my life. In those days, I didn't have too many programs to offer. So that I was a little bit scared myself, but I had this young person's gall. And the concerts went very well. And from that optimistic standpoint, of course, everybody's a little vain in a certain sense. The concerts went well, you like the orchestra, so you automatically, you want to like their surroundings too. And that was my first contact with Israel.
As a musician, since I heard about the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, that was for me the top of the mountain, the Olympus. And I remember when I was in the army band, and I used to go and ask for tickets with a uniform, give me a ticket, to get in. And I used to see the people from the Israel Philharmonic walking and getting in through the door of the artist. And I always look at them with such a respect. And I always try to be so little when they passed near me, because I felt I'm nothing. Until I'll be in this orchestra, I have to be so good.
Ein Harod, one of several farming communities in the Jezreel. Originally half swamp, the valley was settled in the 20s by European Jews and is today rich, verdant, productive. The pioneers who came to Palestine brought along a traditional love of classical music from the continent which they'd left, music they now needed to give them a sense of continuity and a measure of tranquility. And they imbued music in their children. Zev Steinberg, performing with the orchestra since 1942, he is now its senior member. At 15, his family hurried him away from Europe to the safety of Palestine and to Ein Harod, where he worked the ground and studied music.
When I came to this country in '34, I came out of a comfortable bourgeois home in Germany with all the luxuries and nice little things that entailed, including theater, concerts, opera, everything. Here, that was out. I came to a kibbutz in which life at that time, 1934, was comparably quite primitive. That was the shock. The non-shock was that so much work, so much love, so much caring for this first group of children from Germany was heaped on us that within a very short time we really felt at home.
For generations, the Jews of Europe were a part of its cultural fabric. But in the aftermath of World War I, a sick nationalism, the forerunner of Nazism, swept across the continent, changed its political climate, and spread terror among Jews who then began to flee. Bronislaw Huberman, a Jew, Polish-born and Berlin-trained, was a world-renowned violinist. Sensing trouble ahead, he conceived the idea of a Jewish orchestra in a Palestine homeland. Huberman assembled some of the best musicians in Europe and brought them to Tel Aviv. The Palestine Symphony Orchestra was born.
The original idea of Bronislaw Huberman in 1936, or rather it started already in 1935, was to have an orchestra in Palestine which could give work to the best of those orchestra musicians in Europe which were thrown out of their jobs through the Nazis, by the Nazis, which means, first of all, German Jewish musicians, but these included quite a lot of Jewish musicians with Polish and Russian backgrounds who had emigrated during the early 20s into Germany to study and remained there and played in orchestras. Thus, the orchestra, at its outset, the first concert took place in December 1936. These members talked among themselves German, Polish, and Russian, no other language.
It was, in general, a German-oriented orchestra, and the glory of it was its strings. The string section were, indeed, all first chairmen from great German orchestras who had been forced to leave, who had fled. Most people say that the orchestra then was the genius orchestra of all time, because, of course, it was mainly comprised of all these ex-concert masters from Leipzig and from Dresden and Berlin and wherever, refugees. And if you have a violin section filled with concert masters, you can't go wrong.
Having brought together 75 musicians, Huberman needed an eminent conductor to introduce the orchestra to the world. He reached out to the most eminent maestro, Arturo Toscanini, and invited him to come to Palestine to conduct the new orchestra. Revolted by fascism and in a strike for freedom, Toscanini agreed and appeared at the inaugural concert.
Toscanini was received here with the most fantastic respect and enthusiasm, first of all because of what he did. Toscanini's protest against National Socialism was his first concert in 1936 here in Tel Aviv.
It was a real festival thing. I remember Toscanini came to the hall very, very early, and he asked us also to come very early because it was raining and it was cold, and we have to play before that the instruments are warm and the fingers from the fiddlers are going good, and we have been very, very nervous too, you know.
Excited.
Excited. Then it was the beginning of a new life from us all, and it was very important for our future to play well that Toscanini can tell the public on the next day on the newspaperman about this, how he is satisfied with the orchestra. So I think we played everybody from us like a soloist.
Under Toscanini, the concert was both a triumph of music and a stunning statement in support of human rights. Word of the orchestra's excellence spread. Distinguished soloists and outstanding guest conductors were attracted to its podium. In the roster of guest conductors, Leonard Bernstein has appeared most frequently. He has made his own unique contribution to its stature.
The first time I went there, it was still called Palestine, and the orchestra was called the Palestine Symphony Orchestra. And I remember the first program very well. In the Ohel Shem, it was a tiny little theater, which held, I don't know, less than 1,000 people, I should think, which meant we had to give each program 13 times, something like that, to accommodate this incredible audience, which was so hungry for music that there was no way to satisfy them. I mean, we could have given the program 1,300 times and still had full houses. It was so exciting, I went back again as soon as I could, which was the next year. And by the time I came back, it was suddenly Israel, and they were at war.
War in 1948, because Israel had declared itself a sovereign state. Requests immediately ensued for the Philharmonic to come to the fighting zones to perform for the soldiers.
The cultural officer of the Negev Brigade phoned me and asked me if I could get in touch with Lenny Bernstein because they had just conquered Beersheba. Couldn't we come and play there for the Negev Brigade? I went to Bernstein with the orchestra management, and Bernstein flew at it. He was very enthusiastic, and they very much wanted Lenny to play on a piano there, to play Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue for the troops. Now, how do you get a piano in Beersheba? They found a piano in Beersheba in an Arab bar. It was a bar piano. It was out of tune. It was in horrible condition. Lenny played Rhapsody in Blue on that piano. It was terrific.
I remember they set up a piano on some of these rocks. It was very shaky. One leg on one rock of the piano, another. And I sat at this piano, and we somehow distributed the audience so that they could see me. And 5,000 soldiers showed up. They came in jeeps and camels, and I don't know what they came in. They filled this whole archaeological dig. And we played Mozart Concerto and the Rhapsody in Blue. And one thing you might not know about this concert, there were Egyptian reconnaissance planes roaming around this area, which perceived 5,000 troops assembling in Beersheba, and could not conceive that they were assembling to listen to Mozart in the desert. I mean, this is unerhört. I mean, not imaginable to anybody but us people who know what the Israelis were like in those days, and still are, and what music meant to these people.
In 1978, Isaac Stern, great violin virtuoso, intimately associated over the years with the orchestra and deeply devoted to it, was there in Israel to help celebrate 30 years of independence. Commenting on the concert, Stern explored memories of 1948.
There are many stories told, but it is true that when they were building what was later called the High Road of Courage, and is now that road that leads up to Jerusalem, the road was built under great attack and great danger, and many men died. And Jerusalem was under siege and had no food. And the first convoy, after this road was built at night and under what seemed to be impossible odds, when they did finally get through to lift the siege, what did they bring first? Of course, some milk, some foods, and some medical supplies. And they said, the next convoy will be coming soon. They said, we have had a very terrible time. Maybe we need something more than just food. Can the orchestra come up? Now, when you stop to think of it, it is It is a it's a thing of wonderment that anybody would think of it. Secondly, that they would go is even more impossible, and yet, in the second convoy, it was the orchestra that went up under fire and played. It fills a need.
Performing the world over, the IPO is today the country's most treasured cultural possession. Its musicians are now the sons and daughters of the first Israeli citizens, joined by others drawn to it from abroad and by emigres from Europe. In 1969, Zubin Mehta, Parsi Indian born in Bombay, was made the orchestra's music advisor, later permanent director. He's also music director of the New York Philharmonic. In 1981, the Israel Philharmonic named Mehta its music director for life.
Zubin Mehta, as musical director, has done something to this orchestra which the orchestra had been missing all the years before, a style of its own. We were a guest-conducted orchestra. We had the most famous conductors in the world as conductors, but no one permanent. In other words, we had no permanent line of development, artistic development, which we now, through Mehta, have. Mehta is responsible for programming, for chairing, for positioning people. Mehta is responsible for giving the orchestra a style of its own, which it definitely has developed, especially during the last 10 years.
It is a better orchestra. It has a profile of its own that is distinctly its own because of the unmatchable personal attention of Zubin Mehta. This man will fly to Israel at the drop of a yarmulke. and he does. You know, it's extraordinary. He curls up inside an airplane and he's over there and he'll get off the plane, an hour later he'll be rehearsing or he'll be in a meeting. It's not only the fact that he goes there, it's the fact that his heart goes with it and his thoughts go with it. His inner person belongs as much to Israel as it does anywhere. He does belong to other places too, which is much of the strength of what he gives Israel, because he belongs to other places and he has the respect of other places.
His marriage, we call it, with the IPO is a very unique and special relationship. I think that his Indian heritage, his European education, and his American life have molded him into the right person for the IPO, because he also is an international personality. Not by the mileage he makes, by what he's made of. And he is very deeply involved in the pioneer happening of Israel, of the very special experience of Israel. And I think he's proud to be part of it. Does far beyond what most people realize, not only for music in Israel, but for the image of Israel, for the purpose of Israel, for explaining and carrying over the message of what's under this little small country isolated over here that makes so much noise everywhere in the world.
Came here during the 6-Day War. This is a real story. He quit everything he had abroad. He was staying in a hotel in Rome, waiting for a plane to pick him up, and there was no room on the planes. And he said, I know, I felt terribly. He said, I felt like I was sick. And he's quite a healthy specimen, you know. And he said, I must come to Israel, one way or another. And then he got a call and said, in an hour you have to be in the airport. So I jumped out of the hotel, I picked the first cab, and I said, I'll double your fare, just bring me to the airport in less than 1 hour.
In May of 1967, there was an impossible situation here. And the second impossible situation was with the orchestra that was suddenly left without a conductor. And my desire first was the fact that I know that in Israel, and in Tel Aviv in particular, the people cannot live without music. I went straight to the Israeli ambassador and I said, look, I have to go. Because now especially, we need to play music. Now this wasn't my orchestra in those days. I was not music director at all. But by the summer of '67, I really felt very close to them on a human level. Now, not musician to musician. Because that was close already since '61. And you understand that, I told him. And he says, yes, but I don't know how to get you there. And I said, look, the first plane you see, you please get me on. In the meantime, my Italian friends tell me I'm crazy, etc. Because, you know, the first day, the reports of the war were savage. By Tuesday morning, I was on an El Al plane together with a man called Mr. Horowitz, who was the governor of the Bank of Israel, and the Newsweek correspondent, Bill Curtis Pepper. The three of us were on that plane. Why three of us? Because the rest of the plane was full of ammunition.
I'll never forget the first time that I played with him. He was still conducting the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and I was invited to play. And I'd never had such an experience before as it was. It was something quite, it was like a dynamo was there conducting, and it really affected me tremendously. The excitement and the, first of all, and the control and the flair that he has in his conducting is very infectious.
We're ready for them. 6 before 31. Come on.
Can we start at 6 before 31?
Of course, Mr. Perlman.
Oh, thank you
Whatever
so
you
much.
say.
Thank you so much. Is it okay with you for the sake of Shalom? No. Oh, the pump.
Because I play with this orchestra, and I've played with them for so many years. We always have a good rapport. It's like playing with friends. Of course, the conductor on the podium, Zubin Mehta, is somebody that I've known for at least 15 years, and we have played more. I think I've actually played with Zubin more concerts than with any conductor that I've played with. And when you play with a friend on the podium and friends around you, it becomes very, very informal and an awful lot of fun. His relationship with the members of the orchestra basically it's like a relative. He's really a relative. You know, when he comes here to Israel, he's one of everybody. And whenever he goes on the podium and he conducts, there is a certain wall between conductor and orchestra, which with him is absent. And yet he's able to control the people who play.
use the small one, huh?
I know that a lot of people in a lot of wonderful orchestras who say to you, look, when you have a terrific orchestra, it doesn't matter who conducts, but I disagree with that totally. I think that you can have a great orchestra, and if you have a conductor who's not so terrific, then the orchestra will sound on a certain level, but it will not give a great performance unless somebody at the podium really has the hands, the personality, and the musical knowledge to control.
The actor talks straight to the audience. The conductor does not talk to the audience. He talks to an orchestra and makes an orchestra do what he wants and projects his own artistic will through the orchestra to an audience. That takes something special, which only very few people really have.
Music, contrary to all the other arts, is only little black spots on a piece of paper until it's performed. The conductor sets the tone, the style, and at his cue, we perform. This is why any given work is a completely different work depending on who's conducting.
Yeah, listen, can we just do that from the bar up to 3?
The conductor really can be the soul, the guiding spirit, the point of inspiration, really. It is the conductor's prerogative to decide how the music is going to be performed. How means at what speed, at what nuance, at what dynamic level. It is a conductor's responsibility, if he is faithful to the score he is interpreting, faithful to the old master, to Raphael, Michelangelo, Beethoven, Mozart. If he's faithful to these creators' intentions, he is the one who absolutely has to decide, because you cannot lead a 100-piece orchestra and make them decide, although that's sometimes what the Israel Philharmonic tries to do. But that's a national characteristic. First of all, musicians have to feel well. This may be a simple statement, but a bird doesn't sing when the weather is bad.
Where is it? What?
Now, we all make mistakes. We all get into a rut sometimes at rehearsal. Sometimes I get furious here when I see a lack of concentration. And we have to be careful of that. But basically, if an orchestra is made to feel quiet inside, and sometimes in Israel, it is not quiet inside. I feel this agitation.
No, that's got to be dry, huh? It's got to be dry with the bass drum. Once more, just 10. 1, 2. That's it. Good.
Now you have to understand that this country has always been in a semi-state of war or imminent danger. They don't know how else to live. Therefore, their psychosis, their psychological build-up can't be really compared to a person living in the Midwest or in California. Really, it can't be. So they don't have the natural quiet inside them that we just expect of them. Sometimes it bothers you at a rehearsal because it's half an hour to deadline time, and we haven't gotten through the program.
What about the crew? This must be scary. 15. Scare the hell out of everybody here. 2.
As as everyone knows, in Israel, if you have 15 people in your home, you also have 15 prime ministers in your home at the same time.
Don't start any time in the bar. You start on the third beat of the bar. Huh?
So on the stage in rehearsal, everyone has an opinion, and we're criticized for slack discipline.
I'm going on. I'm going on.
But there's nothing like a concert with the IPO. It's hard to work with us, I know. I'm sure it's tiring.
Here, everyone has its personality. And why does the music making become so electrifying? Is because every one of them is a conscious interpreter. Okay, until there. Now, this has to be differentiated from those orchestras where you find people sitting and playing the same parts, playing them very proficiently, doing everything that the conductor has said, but not using too much of their own self. Soul is even too far to go. But here you will see, just observe, sit anywhere and look at an individual. You will find on very rare occasions that somebody is just a passenger, just going along. Everyone is interpreting, and because they're interpreting, they're thinking. And because they're thinking, they're talking at the rehearsal.
Just a moment, please.
I think that the life in Israel with the war and the constant threat has an effect on the personality of the musicians and on the orchestra as a whole, because it's a composition of personalities. A very special thing about the IPO, I think, is its heart. I could tell you a small incident. In 1964, in the fall, I had just completed my first season in the IPO. I was in a very serious automobile accident here in Israel, on the highway on the way to a concert in Haifa. And I have had no one here at that time. I was just me. And I underwent surgery. The tendons in my right hand were severed in 2 fingers. My nose and half of my right cheek were all gone. My lip was, I had major surgery, plastic surgery, and then I had to go through 6 months of therapy with my right hand. I don't know how I wasn't sure I'd ever play again. Deep inside. The doctors said that it all depends on you. If you want to play, you'll play. The IPO came to me in the hospital when I was in a cast and offered me a contract to play my first solo performance of the Mozart Concerto for Flute and Harp in May. This accident was in October. And I said, how can I commit myself to play in May? And they said, the doctors say, if you want, you'll play. So I drove every day from here to Tel Shomer, which is on the other side of Givatayim, Ramat Gan, every day for therapy. And I had to raise these 2 fingers, and it would go, you know, like this a little bit, and I played the concerts. And Zubin Mehta conducted in May, less than a year after the accident. Now this, why do I say it? They got the best doctors. They took care of me. And I'm quite sure that this was one more thing that added on to my staying.
The Israel Philharmonic Orchestra is, for me, the best ambassador of culture and goodwill to abroad for Israel, because this body can travel and it plays for a lot of people. There are other many wonderful institutions in Israel, like the Weizmann Institute, the Hebrew University, the Haifa Technion, but they can't travel and bring this beautiful music to so many people.
Israel has the largest subscription public in the world. We perform every concert, every program for a subscription public of 30,000 people. We have 4 concerts in Haifa, 1 in Jerusalem, and 8 in Tel Aviv.
I think this orchestra is very unique. The fact that we have such a big audience And the fact that so many beautiful, the best artists from all over the world come to this country, in the wartime even. And even the peacetime in Israel, it's almost a war, you know. That's for me not normal. Not normal. I don't think it's normal. In other orchestras in the world, it doesn't go like this.
I can't imagine a country where music plays such an important role as in Israel. It's part of the society here. It isn't a fringe element. In the United States, I always felt that I was a bit on the outside as a musician. But the difference here is that you can walk into the bank or the post office or a pharmacy and people recognize us as if we're some kind of very important person in the life. And it isn't just musicians who feel that way, it's the general public. And that hasn't ceased to amaze me for 16 years. It's a very beautiful feeling. Once I came home from a concert and I had to take benzene for the car, and someone pulled up behind me and I said, "Hey, you played in the concert tonight, right?" And then they started to tell me that they weren't very pleased. They thought that the orchestra was kind of relaxing and they weren't giving their best. And this kind of thing is not unusual.
They're too knowledgeable almost, as far as I'm concerned. Look, with them you can't do anything. In other words, with them they never get impressed by anything, because when you play well, they say, "Of course you play well." And if you don't play well, it says you didn't play well. So no matter what you do, you can't win, you know. If they hear something fantastic, they're used to it. And if they don't, then they know it's no good.
If you put a Brahms symphony on with the Los Angeles Philharmonic or the Israel Philharmonic, I would know which one. Because it's not a question of soul. Now we have to get into practicalities. I would know the sounds that each individual solo instrument makes. In other words, I would recognize an oboe player in Los Angeles as compared to Israel. And definitely the string sound of Israel is so special that comes through immediately.
If an orchestra is good, it has a character. And certainly the Israel Philharmonic has its own distinguishable character that you can't mistake. At least whenever you hear the orchestra strings, it's first of all in the European tradition. It is not like an American orchestra sound. It's like a European orchestra sound. And it's fabulous. Just love it.
Well, the string section are made out of such incredible instrumentalists that I feel in my first violin section here, every violinist can stand up at any moment you want and play a concerto. In fact, sometimes what they do, which is not completely kosher, is they make the soloists nervous. How? They come outside the soloist room at intermission and play the same concerto he's just played. Dafke, to show him maybe he did something wrong. Or how in Bialystok or in Vilna or Odessa, they played it differently. And so that makes us quite upset sometimes. But that is this burning ambition that they have.
Well, I started to play quite late. I started to play at the age of 9. I had a wonderful teacher. His name was Bartosz. He was one of the greatest musicians that I ever met in my life. And then at the age of 20, I went to America. And then I came to New York. I remember I practically went to every concert possible. I didn't care what it is, singer, cellist, violinist, pianist. I practically slept in the concert halls, just to listen to, because I was so thirsty for music, and to hear what other people do. That's the way you learn, really, in every kind of art. I love to teach. I see a lot of success in my teaching. I have a pupil, 12 years old, which if everything goes right with her, I think she's going to be one of the greatest. She has the capability of playing everything, with no trouble. Just tell her what to do and she does it. And the most important thing is that she is able to practice. And she has that talent to practice between 6 and 8 hours a day, and without that you can't do anything. And on top of that, you have the talent and the temperament and intelligence. And I think she'll become one of the greatest.
In my opinion, every kid who plays the violin in Israel and who grows up in Israel has a dream. I had the same dream, to play one day with the Israel Philharmonic. Just recently, in one of my visits, somebody from the office of the Israel Philharmonic gave me a little copy of a letter that I wrote in 1957 to the Israel Philharmonic board, saying, I hereby, and it was one of those typical 12-year-old letters. He says, dear sirs, to whom it may concern, I am a young violinist and I would love to audition for you. I have the following works ready. I have a Bach unaccompanied partita first movement. I have another little Mendelssohn first movement concerto and so on. And they have a copy of that letter, so I have it with me. It was very cute. I had fairly good handwriting, not too good, though. Well, I didn't get a chance to play for them. It was one of those letters they didn't answer. But so when I came in 65, it was obviously like coming home, and it was a dream come true. It was one of the greatest dreams that I've had, and I finally achieved it.
regard as primary for all of us involved with Israel to be certain that the bond between Israelis and the earth that bred them, the surroundings that gave them sustenance at the beginning, should never be broken. In the case of Perlman, Zuckerman, Serge Luca, Miriam Fried, others whom we have met over the years and believed in and helped, it has not been a difficulty. Not one has forgotten Israel or lost ties, very close ties. Retained their Hebrew-speaking ability at all times. They guard it jealously to this day. It's a wonderful tongue because they can use it between themselves in most places without being understood. It is very important, too, for all those who have any regard for Israel's future, not only its present, that we should be together in refructifying the earth there. Talent and the accomplishment of talent begets talent. And it would be very difficult for me to imagine anything that one can do in life that could bring more satisfaction, more of that inner glow or a smile that comes from the inside, than to see these young people come today on stage and be the leaders of their time. You know, as I speak, I begin to remember a whole panoply of what you would call special events. The concert with Bernstein, the first time that we played on the other side of Jerusalem. Playing with Mehta during the Yom Kippur War. There are moments when artists came, people came. There were moments in the history of the country that were signalized by performances. Sometimes I was lucky enough to take part. And I think it is the blending of all the special events that make the relationship with the Israel Philharmonic a unique one, different from that with any other orchestra or any other place in the world. It probably is the touchstone of why it is, to this day, with all the gives and takes that even can happen in the warmest of families, which is the way we must look at it, why it remains to this day a special place and a special time for all of us, both Israeli and non-Israeli, who have an identification, a sense of brotherhood in its richest form, a hand clasping, if you will, constantly continuing from the first moment we met till long after we're dead.